I'm Assaf, founder and CEO of BigPanda. And what we do is we are an algorithmic platform for automating service operations. Service operations is those folks in your IT teams that are actually in charge of keeping the lights on, folks that have to maintain your critical applications and your critical infrastructure. It might be called Network Operations Center, it might be called DevOps, it might be called SREs, but it's the folks who actually have to keep your critical business services running. And their world has become dramatically more difficult over the last 10, 15 years, as you've seen some major changes around the way we automate the data center. So you've seen companies investing millions, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to automate how they do software, to automate how they do infrastructure. So from the infrastructure perspective, you're seeing this trend of how do I move away from these hand-orchestrated data centers in my basement towards a cloud and a multi-cloud strategy? How do I move from VMs towards containers? How do I manage all of that with infrastructure automation like Chef or Puppet or Terraform? The same thing is happening on the software side. So a lot of companies are thinking, how do I move away from these large monolithic applications that I deploy once a quarter or once a month towards microservices that I can deploy on once a week, once a day, 57 times a day, and give developers much more power to do that autonomously. And those are all very, very good trends because it's let IT not just be a provider of uptime, but be an enabler of agility. One last part of the data center, though, that hasn't automated is the actual folks who have to run and maintain all of that software and all of that infrastructure. And they have not automated at all in the last decade. They've got many, many more moving parts, and those parts are moving a lot faster than they've ever been before, and they're very challenged to keep up with that really tsunami of IT data to figure out, hey, where do I have business services that are in trouble? How do I detect that really quickly? And how do I remediate that before I've got angry customers who can't check out on Airbnb or Amazon, or I've got my reservation system at my airline is not working? And those people come to work today, and this is their reality. They've got lots of new systems, lots of new monitoring tools that are monitoring that systems, and they've got tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of data points that they have to piece together to be able to see where do I have applications in trouble and what do I do about it. And obviously, that is a world of pain. It's a world of pain for the folks in the NOC, the technical practitioners, because they have very high MTTR, mean time to resolution, because by the time I actually figure out where in here is the 99% of noise and where is that 1% of stuff of S hitting the fan, it's too late, which leads to missed SLAs, and in the worst case, customer-facing outages. And it's a business pain for the CEO, the VP of IT, and the CFO and the CRO, because I've got unhappy customers when I have outages. I've got runaway costs. So a lot of our companies come to us and say, hey, the size of our NOC has doubled, but the amount of information they have to keep up with has not doubled. It's gone up by orders of magnitude. And so we're throwing people at a machine data problem, and it's not working. And we've got a lot of cloud migration risk. So a lot of our customers come and say, hey, we've got this legacy stack that's a giant pain in the ass, and we can't make heads or tails of it. But guess what? We're also moving to AWS, or we're moving to Azure. And that's a whole other stack that we have to understand and maintain, and we're not keeping up. And that's what we do. We essentially take a very legacy stack where one or two vendors sold you the lion's share of your systems. So they sold you all your network, your compute, your storage. They sold you some kind of A to Z monitoring suite to monitor all those systems. They sold you some kind of event correlation tool to make sense of all that gobbledygook and turned it into human consumable insight for your folks in the NOC. And then they sold you some kind of workflow. And all you had to do was pay them $17 million a year, and they'd never innovate, and that was awesome. That's gone today. And what you've seen is this radical disruption in 3 of those layers. So today on the systems layer, people are moving to multi-cloud. They're not using 1 or 2 vendors for the lion's share of their stuff. They're using 157 different clouds and open source providers and SaaS solutions and so on and so forth. The second layer of innovation has been in their monitoring tooling. So as they have all sorts of new systems and environments, they need all sorts of new monitoring tools to keep up with what's going on there. And they've innovated on their workflow. So ServiceNow has come along and said, hey, ITSM is still this great solution, but let's give it to you as a cloud offering. And then Jira and Slack and a bunch of other people came along and said, hey, how about we give you something much, much more flat and much, much cheaper, less features, less cost, and that's obviously lit a fire as well. Problem is now you've got this very, very heterogeneous stack. None of these tools speak to each other, and basically it's a big data explosion for the people in service assurance. And you can throw as many people as you want at it. They won't be able to scale as fast as this data mess is scaling. And that's what we essentially do. We say, hey, if you want to automate your way out of this mess, what you don't need to do is rip and replace all of the modern systems you've already put inside. What you need is a modern approach to event correlation, which can basically say, hey, let's take an algorithmic or a machine learning approach, suck in all of those different heterogeneous, noisy, fast-moving monitoring tools or alerts, turn that into easily consumable insight, and essentially let the people in your NOC really, really quickly see, where do I have critical business services in trouble, and what do I do about it? That's it. Thank you.